Let's welcome in former Trump campaign aide Rick Gates and Executive Director for America First Works, Ashley Hayek. Rick, to you first. I don't know if you watched or listened to the entire 2-hour-long conversation, but what did you make of it?
Look, I think it was vintage Donald Trump. He attacked on all the key issues. He contrasted himself with Kamala Harris. I thought it was overall a good focus for him to stay on key messages. He got off message a couple times, in terms of what he needs to do to win new voters over. I mean, look, we've seen him in these situations before where now he's got the base, the rallies, the other events, he's brought them in. What he needs to do is be able to figure out how to bridge to those moderates and independents, particularly in those battleground states and those key demographics. Last night, he stuck to the message, primarily, which is really good. I'd like to see that more as we go through the rallies and other events, but to get those other voters in, that's going to be the goal for him to win.
Can you be more specific? Where did he go off track last night? Because I have heard a lot of the conversation over the last 4 or 5 days since Trump did the press conference at Mar-a-Lago. And this is CNN, New York Times, MSNBC, Washington Post. These are their talking points. I don't care about their talking points. If Trump wants to talk about crowd size, talk about crowd size. And last night he did it with Elon Musk. I don't care. He's doing something that Kamala Harris doesn't have the courage or the intelligence to do, and that's sit down and have a 2-hour conversation with somebody. By the way, Elon Musk, a friendly interview. He's endorsed Donald Trump. I get that. Kamala could sit down with George Stephanopoulos. Kamala could sit down with Jen Psaki for all I care. The fact is she's not doing it. So does Trump ramble sometimes? Does he maybe say things that he doesn't need to say? Sure. But if you're talking to somebody extemporaneously for 2 hours, I think that's going to happen, Rick.
Look, Trump has an authenticity that no other candidate I've ever seen has. And that does matter. And so he should be able to say anything he wants. But when you're talking about, the election in 2020, we've relitigated, we've talked about it, we move on. This is an important element where he's got the future in his hands in 2024. Regardless of what anybody thinks about the election in 2020, now is the time that American voters care about today, here, the present. They don't care about the past. They don't want what Kamala Harris has. Focus on that. Talk about that. And he did a good job on hitting on all those issues. But there are issues we need to move away from as a Republican Party to get those types of independent and moderate voters. Because, Rob and Charlotte, as this race is extremely close. And it is going to come down to those key battleground states and certain demographics in those states.
Yeah, Ashley, Mark Halperin, we had him on earlier, and he said that he set out to paint Kamala Harris last night as that San Francisco radical. Did he do enough to point out her bad policies? Because that's what this election needs to be about, is what Kamala Harris stands for.
I think so. And I mean, talk about being on from 8:40 at night until for over 2 hours. The stamina to be able to continue that conversation and have such depth on the policy issues was really commendable. One of my favorite takeaways was Elon Musk volunteering to help on a government efficiency committee to rein in government waste. Pair that with Vivek Ramaswamy, and can you imagine a more dynamic duo to dismantle the deep state? And you've got a dream team just that can come in on day one to shake up Washington. And I love that idea. I love the conversation and the ideas that went back and forth. And then you compare that to Kamala Harris, who's nowhere to be found. She won't take a press interview, to your point. She wants to speak from a teleprompter. She won't address any of her so-called policy changes because she hasn't made the changes. They're not her policies. It's a bunch of staff and surrogates who's covering for her. Because she has such a radical left-wing record. And that's really what this is about. I think that he did a tremendous job. And I think it's, our responsibility to make sure to highlight the fact that, for example, her website, there's not a single policy issue. You have, several different buttons that are asking for your money. They want your money to push their radical agenda, but they won't let you have the opportunity to have a conversation.